Welcome, and thank you for being here this late this evening.
Thank you. Phil Sobey, Lauren Development.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about, I guess, how you're looking at that lot that's got a lot of slope to it?
How I'm looking at that lot today is under the current guidelines, which in the engineer's report, the city staff's engineer report, it basically says that the plan was reviewed for, erosion and things like that, and clearly states that it's feasible for that lot to be developed. It goes on to say that, maybe as a precaution, we could look at a future standard, which is going to be looked at in the future in terms of what may be adopted by the city. So I get that, and I understand what they're saying with that, but I think, certainly, this project, this application was originally proposed to be submitted at the beginning of this year, and so obviously a lot has changed since then, but the fact is, I think that I'm looking at it from a standpoint of what today's standards are for the feasibility of developing on that slope. And so, of course, we'd love to see that lot be included as a part of the project. If it boils down to a take it or leave it scenario, all or nothing, am I willing to give it up? Well, of course, if it means, it's only 2 or it's nothing or, that type of thing. So I'm not saying that it's all or nothing. I certainly would like to see it included and incorporated under current standards, because I think that, by the zoning and the ordinances and whatnot, that it fits, that it meets the guidelines, that it's only for a precautionary measure that it be pulled out. So I'd like to see it stay.
Okay. Many times when we look at developments, we have developers enter into development agreements, and it's very customary that our developer agreements require a certain amount of escrow be put up by the developer, or that there be a certain level of letter of credit. How would you be able to accomplish those provisions if you were entering into a developer agreement with the city?
Well, the lender, aside from everything that's been said and brought up and probably it's bad, don't get me wrong, but it looks worse than it is in terms of the foreclosure and how someone may perceive the relationship between us and the lender. However, the lender understands exactly how things work. Nobody here is suggesting that this thing get approved without some type of a developer's agreement and without some type of financial guarantees. Obviously, I know full well how the system works, and so we know that that's second nature. We know that, even tonight, this approval that takes place hypothetically, that, it's on the condition that we provide that, and so we know that we can't get away from that, and so our financial condition and the way the market is right now, we're not basing it on that, because if we were, I don't think I need to tell anyone here what the world is like, what the economy is like. It's terrible. It's bad for me. It's been bad. There's no question. Mr. Yarwood said there's indications that we're kind of hurting. There's no indication. I'll flat out say it. It's terrible. It's the worst it's ever been since I've been in business. I mean, I don't think that we're trying to skirt around it. I don't think we're trying to mask it or pretend it's not as bad as it is. It's terrible. It's the worst it's been. It's the worst I've ever seen it, and it's probably the worst that it's been for everybody here, and it's probably going to get worse. So with all that said, I said it in the Planning Commission meeting that this isn't like a typical application where we're coming in and we're just gung-ho and we're happy and, we think we're going to get this thing developed and build some houses and so on and so forth. It's not that, and I'll be honest, we're just trying to cap losses. We've already lost money. We've lost everything that we've stuck into it. The bank's going to take a huge hit. We could lose $2 million on the project, or we could lose $1 million on the project, and obviously, from those two choices, we'd rather just lose $1 million, but there's still nothing good about losing $1 million, so it's bad. There's no question about it. We're just trying not to make it worse, or between two bads, we're trying to take the better of the two bads, and so that's what it boils down to. So the lender is fully aware that, upon an approval and upon any type of moving forward, that financial guarantees are going to have to be put in place, and to achieve that goal of capping losses, everybody realizes that more money will have to be spent even though, again, it goes against, what someone may think is the right thing to do right now. If we hadn't started this project and it was just a matter of making the decision today, do we get involved? The answer is absolutely no. I mean, there's just no question. It's suicide to start a project today. But we're already, we're up to our eyeballs in this project. And so it's not about, do we pull out or do we start? It's do we finish and cap the loss? And that's where we're at today. And so I think it's just a real simple matter of economics for us, and it's not a gain by any means. Well, you could call it a gain if we don't lose as much as we could lose. There's a gain there, but it's a loss any way we shake it. And so we're just we're playing within the rules, we're playing within the guidelines, what the city ordinances between both cities would allow. We're not trying to push that envelope, we're just trying to maximize the development potential to cap the losses. The bottom line is the property is worth more to any potential investor or buyer as a project that's been approved to allow for X versus a property that's from scratch. It's a raw piece of land. Whoever the new buyer is has to go back to the beginning of the line and start this process all over. So we're just sort of finishing out this process of the approval to sort of complete a portion of that backside stuff so that if there's a new buyer down the road, that this chapter's closed, and they obviously will have to come in and play by the rules set forth under any developers agreements, any resolutions, the stipulations for the resolutions, and so on and so forth. We're just trying to lay out that groundwork.
Mm-hmm. So basically what you're saying that is if you have the approval set in place, it'll be easier to flip the land later to another buyer down the road.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, I don't know that we're going to build on it, so it's definitely for sale. The lender would like to see it sold, On the flip side of that coin, not a whole lot of selling today. So is it realistic that it's going to sell? 50-50 chance, but is it worth more one way than the other? Yep, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Now, getting back to my question I had originally asked staff is that now with your approvals that you had gotten from the City of Little Canada, that was a little over a year ago, were there any particular time frames within those approvals that you received from them that you have to comply with? Because we've been told that there's, you still have other approvals you have to get from Little Canada, but there's been this year gap. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about, why there's the year gap there, and what kind of time tables or time frames do you have that you need to meet with the City of Little Canada?
Okay. There is a deadline. There was a deadline. That deadline has been extended by Little Canada at least a couple times. We've known about, obviously, this Maplewood portion of this project for some time. And just to give a little bit of history as to why it took so long to get to this point is because a year ago, after we knew we had approvals in Little Canada, and one of the stipulations for the approval in Little Canada was to get approval in Maplewood as well. So at that time, we had discussions with staff in Maplewood, and there was some murmuring going around that the acting city, or that the previous city manager was going to be ousted after the first of the year. Now is not a good time to put this thing through. Maybe we should wait until after the first of the year, so on and so forth. That's what we did. We waited. Then we were told that, maybe this isn't going to be just a staff approval level. Maybe it's going to be something that we need to put in front of council. And so there was a series of events that took place that we obviously, unfortunately in hindsight, waited for certain milestones and waited for certain time frames. If we did it all over again, we probably would have just brought it right in and said, well, it is what it is. We're just going to seek the approval. We don't care who the manager is. We don't care what kind of feuding's going on with council and so on and so forth. We just want to get it done. Again, it was a straightforward deal. It sort of stands on its own, we think. But unfortunately, we took some wrong advice. But there was also some discussion, too, along with that potentially this piece of Maplewood could be annexed into Little Canada. And so there were some discussions that went on between myself and Maplewood and Little Canada, and between some staff members of Little Canada and Maplewood as to how that might work. And as it turned out, that was suggested to not be such a great idea, I believe, by Maplewood. And so, you know, so there was a lot of, since the approval in Little Canada, there was a lot of things that sort of happened